June 30th, 1944. Somewhere over the vast Pacific Ocean, at 15,000 feet, two Pratt & Whitney radial engines roared furiously in the dense darkness. The 4,000 horsepower, an embodiment of American engineering, pierced the night sky. The crew in the cockpit received precise vectors from ground control. The target was directly ahead at 12 o'clock. The distance relentlessly close to 8 miles. The pilots executed a turn for interception. Their quarry was a Japanese Arnada, quote, Deos bomber, on a night raid, completely unaware it was being hunted. Above the abyss of the night sky soared the Northrop P-61, quote, 2. This twin-engine aircraft, with a 66-foot wingspan and a crew of 3, possessed a unique advantage that no other fighter of its time had. Radar eyes capable of seeing through the darkest night. The U.S. Army Air Force's High Command seemingly despised it, calling it superfluous, not good enough, and not fast enough. Too heavy, too slow, a waste of precious resources. But the enemy could not see what they did not hear. No engine noise, no searchlight beam, no warning, just 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns materializing from the shadows with deadly precision at close range. By the end of the war, these E-4B aircraft, in the opinion of many, had destroyed 127 enemy aircraft. Their targets never suspected death was approaching until it was too late. The question that arises isn't why such a heavy night fighter was built. The true question is how something everyone considered useless became an elusive phantom, dominating the very darkness. How did something dismissed become a decisive weapon? And what was so special about the Black Widow that allowed it to perform such miracles? Stay with us and watch until the end to discover the answers to these questions. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The night of June 30th, 1944 marked more than just another combat mission over the Pacific. It represented the culmination of debates that had raged at the highest levels of the Army Air Forces for nearly 3 years, dividing the opinions of experts and strategists. As Lieutenant Herman Ernst settled into the pilot's seat of his P-61 Black Widow, call sign Moon Happy, the weight of institutional skepticism pressed on his shoulders as heavily as the suffocating tropical humidity of Guadalcanal. He knew that not only his life was at stake, but also the reputation of the entire project. Ernst's radar operator, Lieutenant Edward Copsell, leaned over the green glowing screen of the SCR-720 radar system. Its cathode ray tube displayed electronic ghosts, representing real aircraft moving in the pitch darkness miles away. It was akin to reading the future in flickering symbols. Behind them, Staff Sergeant Raymond Mooney manned the upper turret, its 450 caliber Browning machine guns ready to complement the 4 20mm Hispano cannons mounted in the aircraft's belly. Together, this 3-person crew embodied everything critics believed was wrong with American night fighter doctrine. They were a living refutation of the skeptics. Too heavy, General Hoyt Vandenberg had declared at a heated Pentagon briefing just weeks earlier, his words echoing in the ears of many. Not fast enough. We're putting crews in flying coffins when we could be giving them mosquitoes. The British de Havilland Mosquito, wooden, incredibly fast, and proven in European night combat, represented everything the P-61 was not. Where an empty Mosquito weighed around 11,000 pounds, a fully loaded Black Widow weighed a hefty 23,000 pounds. Where the Mosquito could reach 400 miles per hour in level flight, The P-61 struggled to maintain 365 miles per hour at optimal altitude. The difference seemed colossal. Stay with us and watch until the end to learn how these seemingly disadvantages turned into advantages. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. But Jack Northrop, the brilliant designer, built his aircraft based on an entirely different, revolutionary philosophy. The twin-boom design was not merely an aesthetic choice, but a strict functional necessity dictated by the demands of night combat. The central nacelle housed the crew and complex weapons systems, with two powerful Pratt and Whitney Ard-entry 800 engines positioned far enough apart to minimize asymmetric thrust issues in the event of an engine failure. The radar antenna, a key element of the "16 Suno," filled the entire nose radome, free from propeller interference, ensuring an unobstructed view. Most importantly, the aircraft's impressive size allowed for a fuel capacity that the Mosquito simply couldn't provide. 606 gallons compared to the British fighter's 460 gallons. This was a crucial factor for extended night missions over the boundless ocean. Ground control's voice crackled clearly in Ernst's headset. "Moon happy. Vector 09. Climb to altitude 20. Target approaching from Rabaul. Presumed Betty-class bomber, likely carrying torpedoes for Henderson Field." The Japanese had been conducting these night harassment missions for months, attempting to wear down the enemy. Single bombers would sneak through the darkness to drop ordnance on American installations. Previous attempts to intercept them with radar-equipped P-38s and F-6F Hellcats had consistently failed. Enemy pilots knew how to use terrain masking and rapid altitude changes to break radar contact, becoming ghosts to earlier systems. Copsil's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with tension. "Go 20. The radar operator's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting gain and scan patterns to maintain target lock. This was more than just operating equipment. It was a true art that distinguished successful night fighter crews from mere statistics. Reading electronic tea leaves and mentally reconstructing the three-dimensional geometry of an interception in complete darkness, where every radar pulse was a clue to the enemy's whereabouts. Ernst pushed the throttles forward, feeling the two radial engines respond with an immediate surge of power. The superchargers whined, forcing compressed air into the cylinders, each engine developing over 2,000 horsepower, transforming the aircraft into a roaring predator. The plane steadily gained altitude in the thin tropical air, its fuel gauges dropping with measured precision, indicating consumption. Range and endurance were paramount in the grueling night battles of the Pacific, not the instantaneous speed that impressed crowds at air shows. That quote 24, Copsil reported, his voice calm but focused. Quote 25. The Japanese pilot, flying by Dead Reckoning and Celestial Navigation, had no idea that American radar technology could track him from the moment he crossed the 100-mile mark. The strategic advantage belonged entirely to the hunters, hidden in the night. At 18,000 feet, Ernst began his interception approach, reducing thrust to avoid overshooting the target. The P-61's radar signature was minimal compared to its imposing size, another ingenious Northrop design decision that paid off in combat, granting the Black Widow invisibility. The twin-boom configuration dispersed radar signals, making the aircraft less detectable to enemy detection equipment. Not that the Japanese bomber carried intercept radar. Their night navigation relied on optical landmarks and radio beacons that American intelligence had long compromised, stripping them of their last chances for stealth. Deep in the night sky, where the lines between life and death blur, a story unfolds that will make you rethink everything you knew about aerial combat. Have you ever felt like you're on the verge of something grand, but invisible forces pull you back? What if I told you there was an aircraft in aviation history that faced the same prejudices, but ultimately proved indispensable in the most critical moments? How did it overcome colossal difficulties and prove its worth against all odds? Today, we'll dive into a world where shadows held deadly secrets, and one aircraft became a true symbol of the night sky. Prepare to discover how American pilots, inspired by the tactics of German aces, revolutionized night aerial combat. What was so special about the Black Widow that allowed it to become the scourge of the night sky, and why, despite all its merits, did it constantly face criticism? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. On that fateful night, as Lieutenant Ernst prepared for the interception, tension hung in the air. Quote 32, Kopsel, the radar operator, announced. Quote 33. This was the culminating moment of a night interception, the final approach that separated triumph from a missed opportunity. Ernst, having absorbed tactical reports from European night fighter squadrons, perfectly understood how German crews utilized the pitch darkness and the element of surprise to devastating effect against Royal Air Force bomber formations. The principles were universal. Approach from below or behind, maintaining radar contact until visual acquisition at minimum range before opening fire. The Japanese Quote 35 bomber suddenly materialized in Ernst's gun sight at 600 yards. Its two engines were clearly visible as dark silhouettes against the countless stars. The Betty pilot maintained a straight and level flight, completely unaware that death was approaching from the 7 o'clock position. Ernst's finger settled on the trigger. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns were ready to unleash over 3,000 rounds per minute, delivering concentrated firepower. This was the moment that validated Northrop's design philosophy and the brilliant training of Ernst's crew. The P-61 was not built for daylight dogfights or high-altitude interception of enemy fighters. Its existence was justified by precisely such scenarios. Finding invisible enemies in the boundless darkness and destroying them before they could complete their deadly missions. The institutional critics who doubted its necessity had never flown combat missions where success meant protecting thousands of sleeping Marines from bombs they would never see. The Betty's wings erupted in flames as Ernst's burst struck its fuel tanks and engine components. The Japanese aircraft flipped over and began its final dive toward the Pacific Ocean, taking with it both its crew and the ordnance that would never reach Henderson Field. For Lieutenant Ernst, this victory meant more than just another kill mark on his aircraft's fuselage. It proved that the unnecessary Black Widow could deliver on its promise when the stakes were highest. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. By early July 1944, The first operational P-61 squadrons were already established on opposite sides of the globe, each facing radically different tactical challenges. In the Pacific, the 6th Night Fighter Squadron operated from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, their black aircraft carefully hidden under camouflage nets during daylight hours. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron began operations from Scorton Airfield in Yorkshire, preparing for the night battles that would define the air war over occupied Europe. The contrast between the theaters of war became evident immediately in the first weeks of operational deployment. Pacific missions demanded long patrols over vast expanses of ocean, hunting individual Japanese bombers approaching American installations under cover of darkness. European operations required an entirely different set of tactics: intercepting formations of German transport aircraft, evacuating personnel from advancing Allied ground forces, or pursuing the elusive V-1 flying bombs that terrorized London throughout the summer. These differences, seemingly destined to expose the P-61's shortcomings, instead highlighted its versatility, leading us to the next question. How could the same aircraft be effective in such disparate environments? Lieutenant Ernst's success over Guadalcanal garnered significant attention in night fighter circles, but also revealed a fundamental contradiction between the aircraft's capabilities and institutional expectations. The P-61's 400-mile combat radius provided Pacific crews with the endurance needed for lengthy patrols. However, its maximum speed of 365 miles per hour at 20,000 feet remained a constant source of criticism among the Air Force High Command. This limitation seemingly doomed the Sukhot .46 ambitions, but in reality, it only underscored its true purpose. This speed limitation became critically apparent on the night of July 15th, when Lieutenant Robert Anderson of the 402nd Night Fighter Squadron attempted to intercept a V-1 flying bomb over the English Channel. Anderson's radar operator, Technical Sergeant William Hayes, achieved perfect intercept geometry, positioning their Black Widow directly behind the German missile, which was hurtling towards London at 350 miles per hour. The P-61 could match this speed, but barely, and only at the cost of structural integrity. What happened next as the aircraft pushed its limits? As Anderson accelerated his aircraft to maximum speed in a shallow dive, the nose radome began to deform under aerodynamic pressure. The plexiglass radar housing, designed for conventional combat speeds and not extreme interception scenarios, bent and cracked as airflows created unexpected pressure differentials. Within seconds, the entire nose section exploded, destroying the SCR-720 radar system and creating a gaping hole in the aircraft's forward fuselage. Hayes managed to maintain intercept data long enough for Anderson to fire a burst from the belly cannons, but the V-1 continued its programmed flight toward London. The damaged at Côte-Fiftontaine limped back to base with its radar capabilities completely destroyed, its crew sobered by the realization that their aircraft had fundamental limitations in high-speed interception scenarios. This incident seemingly confirmed all the critics' fears, but in reality, it only revealed the P-61's true strength in other, no less important aspects. This incident fueled critics who argued that the P-61 was a product of flawed design priorities. However, these same limitations proved irrelevant during typical night fighter missions, where success depended more on persistence and precision than on sheer speed. Throughout August and September, Pacific-based Bajanshoka, quote 53, began accumulating steady kill rates against Japanese night raiders. The 6th Night Fighter Squadron's operations log for this period recorded 17 confirmed kills, with crews consistently demonstrating the aircraft's ability to detect, track, and destroy enemy bombers operating under optimal evasion conditions. Thus, despite all obstacles, the Scott 54R proved that true strength isn't always found in speed, but sometimes in relentless persistence and the ability to adapt to any situation. Imagine the pinnacle of engineering, a weapon designed to turn the tide of war, ultimately becoming obsolete. How is this possible? And what does it say about the fate of innovation in a rapidly changing world? Perhaps each of us has at some point faced a situation where enormous effort and resources were invested in something that, despite its power and potential, suddenly lost its relevance. This story of the P-61 Black Widow, night fighter, is not just a chronicle of a war machine. It's a profound narrative of triumph that turned into paradoxical oblivion. We will learn how an aircraft designed to dominate the night sky became a victim of its own success. In this account, we will delve into the incredible tactical successes of the P-61, uncover the genius of its crews, and trace how strategic changes led to the world's most advanced night fighter finding itself without targets. How did this predator of the night, capable of silently pursuing the enemy, become unneeded? And why did victory ultimately mean its disappearance? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. The tactical philosophy that emerged from these early victories focused not on masking the P-61's perceived weaknesses, but on comprehensively utilizing its outstanding qualities. Flight crews honed the skill of approaching the enemy from below and behind, relying on onboard radar for continuous target tracking while remaining completely invisible. The unique twin-boom fuselage structure ensured minimal radar visibility from a frontal aspect, allowing Black Widows to close the distance to firing range before enemy pilots even realized they were under attack. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. However, operations in the European theater evolved along entirely different tactical scenarios. Here, the crews of the 492nd Night Fighter Squadron adapted their methods to counter German transport aircraft and reconnaissance missions. The saturated airspace over Western Europe demanded significantly more complex coordination with ground control, as countless friendly and enemy aircraft operated simultaneously in relatively confined areas. Quote 64. Crews regularly found themselves in interception situations that required impeccable navigation and lightning-fast reactions. Captain Lee Kendall recently transferred to the Pacific Theater to reinforce the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, skillfully applied European experience to Japanese tactics. His aircraft, dubbed quote 65 Vadio by ground personnel, embodied the lessons learned from many months of night battles over France and Belgium, foreshadowing the new challenges he was about to overcome. Kendall quickly realized that successful interceptions demanded patience above all other qualities. It was crucial to wait for the ideal attack angle rather than hastily occupying suboptimal firing positions. This philosophy proved absolutely decisive during operations in late September near Iwo Jima, where Japanese night bombers began employing sophisticated evasion methods gleaned from intelligence gathered on the European theater of war. Enemy pilots executed abrupt changes in altitude and course, specifically designed to break radar contact, forcing American interceptors to reacquire targets multiple times during a single interception attempt. The P-61's 16-mile radar range provided ample margin for reacquisition, but this was only possible if crews strictly adhered to disciplined approach methods. The aircraft's potent armament became its crucial advantage in these extremely challenging interception scenarios. Unlike single-engine fighters modified for night operations, the Cisco-68 carried sufficient firepower to destroy targets with short bursts. Its 4 20mm Hispano cannons were capable of penetrating bomber armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, while 4 50-caliber Browning machine guns delivered such a density of fire that it guaranteed target destruction even with a relatively low probability of hit. Statistical analysis of combat results conducted before October 1944 revealed clear patterns that fully confirmed Northrop's initial concept. Black Widow crews demonstrated significantly higher kill ratios compared to modified day fighters operating as night interceptors. This was primarily due to the P-61's integrated radar and weapon systems, which allowed for precise, aimed attacks rather than relying on the "70s" tactics. The aircraft's size and complexity, once considered drawbacks, ultimately proved to be critical factors for mission success in real operational conditions. However, these tactical successes could not overcome a larger strategic reality. By November, German air activity over Western Europe had sharply declined, as severe fuel shortages and catastrophic pilot losses reduced Luftwaffe night operations to minimal levels. Japanese night bombing campaigns also waned, as American air superiority eliminated most enemy bomber bases within range of strategic targets. The P-61 increasingly found itself without suitable targets, leading to a resurgence of sharp questions regarding production priorities. The paradox became increasingly apparent to crews who had, in practice, proven their aircraft's exceptional combat effectiveness. They possessed arguably the most sophisticated night fighter in the world, equipped with radar systems and firepower that enemy pilots could neither detect nor effectively counter. Yet strategic circumstances were eliminating the very set of tasks for which the Black Widow had been designed. Victory in the night war ultimately meant that night fighters would become unnecessary, their time irrevocably passing. Spring 1945 brought an unexpected twilight to the era of night fighters. Captain Lee Kendall, now based on Iwo Jima with the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, found himself conducting increasingly routine patrols over waters that once teemed with enemy aircraft. Japanese night bombing operations had dwindled to isolated nuisance missions, launched from bases hundreds of miles away by pilots operating with minimal fuel reserves and antiquated equipment. The strategic calculus that justified the P-61's development was rapidly disappearing. Nevertheless, institutional inertia continued to support Black Widow operations, even as their tactical significance steadily diminished. Northrop's production lines rolled out the last aircraft of a total series of 706 units, each representing hundreds of thousands of dollars in manufacturing costs and thousands of hours of skilled labor. Squadron commanders received orders to maintain combat readiness, despite the clear reality that enemy air activity no longer warranted such immense expenditures of resources and personnel. The contradiction became painfully evident during April operations, when entire night fighter squadrons flew dozens of hours without encountering a single enemy contact. Crews found themselves patrolling empty skies, their sophisticated radar equipment detecting nothing more threatening than weather formations and occasional friendly aircraft operating outside normal coordination procedures. The psychological impact on flight crews was significant. Pilots and radar operators who had trained for months to perfect interception methods now faced the disheartening prospect that their unique skills might never again be tested in actual combat. Shh. Have you ever felt that your efforts, your endless hours of work, your unique skills, all of it suddenly becomes unnecessary, as if what you do isn't valued, and everything you've staked your life on is called into question? It's like being the last hope in pitch darkness, and then suddenly the lights come on, and everyone asks, why were you even needed? That's precisely how many felt who tied their fate to the P-61-79, a night fighter that seemed destined for one purpose, but found itself at the epicenter of turbulent change. This aircraft was the embodiment of advanced technology for its time. A machine capable of seeing in the dark when others were blind. But did it truly live up to the expectations placed upon it? Could it prove its worth as the war relentlessly drew to a close? And what was its true impact on the course of events if the final shots of the war proved so bitterly ironic? Stay with us and watch until the end, because we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to comment where you're watching this video from. As the war approached its inevitable conclusion, General Vandenberg's earlier skeptical remarks took on an almost prophetic tone. The immense resources invested in developing night fighter capabilities began to seem increasingly wasteful, especially against the backdrop of declining enemy activity. However, those same critics overlooked the crucial strategic impact that P-61 operations had during their peak utilization. Japanese command was forced to abandon systematic night bombing raids precisely because American radar-equipped interceptors made such missions prohibitively risky and costly. Final confirmation of the Black Widow's deadly effectiveness came early on August 14, 1945. Kendall's crew, aboard their aircraft named Jiujusjin-43, received coordinates from ground control. A single contact was approaching Okinawa from the northwest. Intelligence indicated the possibility that this aircraft might be carrying Japanese officials seeking to reach Allied headquarters for surrender negotiations. Nevertheless, standard interception procedures remained in effect until positive identification of the target was established. Kendall's radar operator established solid contact at 14 miles, tracking a target that was descending through layers of broken clouds toward Okinawa's airfields. The aircraft's flight profile indicated a twin-engine transport, likely a reconnaissance variant of the Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dina, modified for long-range courier missions. Doctrine required visual identification before engaging, but the pitch darkness and challenging weather conditions made such identification extremely difficult. As Lady in the Dark closed the distance to the target, Kendall observed that the target aircraft had activated its navigation lights and maintained a steady course toward a U.S.-controlled airfield. These signs could indicate friendly intentions, yet intelligence warnings about Japanese deception tactics remained relevant. The decision to engage or identify rested entirely with the intercepting crew, who had complete tactical freedom of action during night operations. At 800 yards, Kendall established visual contact with what appeared to be an unescorted Japanese naval reconnaissance aircraft, performing no defensive maneuvers. The target pilot seemed completely unaware of the P-61's presence, maintaining straight and level flight, presumably orienting by radio beacon. Kendall's finger moved to the fire controls as he settled into an optimal attack position. The burst lasted less than 3 seconds. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns concentrated devastating fire on the enemy aircraft's central fuselage and wing roots. The target instantly disintegrated, its fuel tanks igniting in a blinding fireball that brilliantly illuminated the surrounding cloud formations. Debris scattered over several square miles of ocean surface, leaving no hope for survivors or the recovery of any aircraft parts. Subsequent intelligence analysis confirmed that Kendall's target was indeed carrying Japanese naval personnel attempting to make contact with Allied forces to discuss surrender terms. The irony of the situation proved incredibly bitter. The war's final aerial victory eliminated potential participants in peace negotiations. However, Kendall and his crew acted in strict accordance with established procedures, demonstrating the deadly effectiveness that ensured the success of P-61 operations throughout their combat history. Just hours after this final interception, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender in radio broadcasts, monitored by American intelligence stations across the Pacific. This announcement effectively ended all combat operations, including the night fighter missions that justified the Black Widow's existence. 706 aircraft, thousands of trained personnel, and millions of dollars invested in development suddenly became irrelevant after a single radio broadcast. The statistical report painted a complex, multifaceted picture of operational success and strategic necessity. American night fighter squadrons, equipped with P-61s, destroyed 127 enemy aircraft in approximately 10 months of active combat operations. They also eliminated 18 V-1 cruise missiles and 1 errant B-29 that was flying on autopilot over Iwo Jima. Additional victories remained unconfirmed due to engagements occurring over vast ocean areas where wreckage recovery was impossible. These figures represented far more than just a tally of destroyed targets. They reflected the successful implementation of a revolutionary tactical doctrine. The P-61 convincingly proved that specialized night fighters could dominate in darkness through superior technology and highly trained crews. Enemy pilots who had previously operated with impunity at night now found themselves victims of invisible predators equipped with radar aliquot 93 and devastating firepower. The aircraft's legacy extended far beyond immediate combat results, encompassing broader strategic implications. The Japanese abandonment of systematic night bombing campaigns freed up thousands of American servicemen from air defense duties, allowing them to be redeployed for offensive operations. The UK's adoption of American night fighter doctrine significantly influenced post-war interceptor development programs, which would prove crucial during Cold War confrontations. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 demonstrated that specialized aircraft, designed for specific mission requirements, could achieve tactical success despite apparent drawbacks in conventional performance metrics. speed and maneuverability were far less important than radar capability and firepower. When engagements occurred in complete darkness against unsuspecting targets, lessons learned from Black Widow operations influenced jet interceptor design for decades. As Kendall landed, quote 96, for the last time as a combat aircraft, he carried with him the profound knowledge that his seemingly, thus, quote 97, Wahalaj aircraft had fully fulfilled its design purpose. Critics who questioned the P-61's value failed to understand the fundamental nature of night warfare, where victory belonged to those who could see without being seen and strike without warning. Sometimes, what seems redundant or unnecessary is precisely what becomes absolutely essential when waging war at night. Do you know the feeling when your titanic efforts go unappreciated? When statistics fail to convey the true scale of your achievements? What if an entire war machine, one that changed the course of night battles, faced the same problem, risking being relegated to the scrap heap of history simply because its true power defied simple enumeration? Imagine, the war is over, but for some, the battles continue. In September 1945, as the world breathed a sigh of relief, the Black Widow, the P-61, terror of the night sky, found itself at a crossroads. This aircraft, which waged its war in pitch darkness, now became the subject of intense, sometimes skeptical, scrutiny. The main topic of today's story is the dramatic post-war assessment of the P-61's true value to American aviation and the difficult path to recognizing its unique contribution. How could an aircraft that became a symbol of night superiority be threatened with obsolescence? What invisible factors, beyond dry numbers, determine the true power and necessity of a war machine? And how did its creators and crews manage to defend its reputation before a commission that seemed to speak a completely different language? Today, we will uncover a stunning story that will show that true meaning often lies beyond conventional metrics, and that sometimes the most important victories leave no material evidence. What you will learn will make you rethink much about military history and how success is evaluated. Stay with us and watch until the end, so you don't miss any details of this fascinating story. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to share in the comments which city or country you're following our channel from. The peaceful armistice, though it instantly halted fierce fighting, could not overnight resolve the deep and complex questions about the P-61's ultimate value to U.S. military doctrine. Lieutenant Herman Ernst, a veteran of the night skies, appeared before a War Department evaluation committee in September 1945, tasked with the difficult job of critically analyzing wartime procurements. He was to defend not only his aircraft's reputation, but the very principle of night aerial warfare. The committee, consisting primarily of senior officers who had never flown night fighters, approached the Black Widow program with overt skepticism, focusing exclusively on economic efficiency and strategic necessity, as if it were an accounting report rather than a combat machine. Ernst's testimony shed light on operational realities that no statistical summaries could fully capture. The 127 confirmed kills represented only the tip of the iceberg. These were only the victories where wreckage could be found or irrefutable evidence obtained. But dozens, and possibly hundreds, of additional interceptions occurred over the vast expanses of the ocean, where enemy aircraft simply vanished from radar screens after encountering P-61 crews, leaving no trace. The true kill ratio, therefore, remained unknown, but combat veterans well understood that many successful interceptions simply left no detectable evidence. But what if the Widow's true power lay not just in shot-down planes? More importantly, the psychological impact on enemy operations proved utterly impossible to measure with conventional metrics. Japanese night bombing campaigns effectively ceased not solely due to fuel shortages or pilot losses. The primary reason was that American interceptors, equipped with revolutionary radar, made such missions exceedingly dangerous and virtually suicidal. Enemy commanders, who once routinely raided Allied targets, discovered with dread that they could no longer guarantee the survival of their aircraft even beyond the initial interception zone. This invisible effect, like a shadow cast over enemy airfields, was as devastating as direct physical destruction. Keep watching until the end to fully immerse yourself in this incredible saga. Your like and subscription are the best support for us. And don't forget to share in the comments what city or country you're following our channel from. However, the questions posed by the evaluation committee revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of both night fighter doctrine and specific operational requirements. Committee members repeatedly emphasized the P-61's relatively low speed compared to day fighters, completely ignoring the fact that maximum speed was virtually irrelevant in night interception scenarios, where detection and stealth played the decisive role. They criticized the aircraft's complex design and high maintenance requirements, failing to acknowledge that successful night operations demanded not just an aircraft, but an entire system. Sophisticated radar systems and specialized crew training, something simpler machines simply could not provide. But who could best explain these technical intricacies? Jack Northrop himself, the distinguished engineer and creator, personally appeared before the commission to defend his design philosophy and every technical decision made. The aircraft manufacturer faced a potential congressional inquiry into development costs and production schedules, making his testimony critical for both his company's reputation and future military contracts. Northrop emphatically stressed that the P-61 flawlessly met all specification requirements set by the Army Air Forces during initial procurement negotiations. The twin-boom configuration, so unusual at first glance, provided optimal radar placement without any propeller interference, allowing for detection ranges that single-engine fighters could never achieve. Its heavy armament, consisting of powerful cannons, ensured sufficient firepower to destroy a target with the minimal exposure time, significantly reducing the aircraft's vulnerability during attack runs. Most importantly, the impressive fuel capacity and exceptional structural strength of the aircraft allowed for extended patrol missions across vast Pacific distances, which would have been utterly impossible with lighter interceptors. Northrop's technical presentation included not just a defense of the P-61, but also an in-depth analysis of alternative approaches the Army Air Forces had considered during early development. British Mosquito night fighters, despite their superior speed and proven European combat experience, disastrously lacked the range required for operations across the immense Pacific. Modified P-38 Lightnings, fitted with radar pods, suffered from severe asymmetric loading issues, creating dangerous handling characteristics and rendering them unreliable. Single-engine fighters carrying external radar installations experienced significant performance degradation, completely negating their speed advantages. The data presented by the manufacturer clearly demonstrated that no existing aircraft at the time could perform the night fighter mission as effectively and safely as the purpose-built P-61. Critics advocating for alternative procurement solutions simply fail to grasp the unique and highly specific requirements of night interception operations, where success depended on sensor perfection and overwhelming firepower, rather than conventional performance metrics familiar in daylight combat. But who could speak to the real-world application of all these systems in battle? Edward Copsall, by then a captain, provided detailed testimony regarding radar operator training and the tactical procedures that had proven exceptionally effective in combat. The SCR-720 radar system was a truly revolutionary technology that demanded many months of specialized and intensive training before operators could achieve the necessary level of competence. The complexity, which critics deemed excessive and unwarranted, in fact reflected incredibly sophisticated capabilities, enabling precise intercepts in conditions where visual target identification remained absolutely impossible. Copsall's operational analysis revealed the intricate coordination required between the pilot, radar operator, and ground-controlled interception points during every successful mission. The P-61's three-person crew configuration provided unique redundancy and specialization that single-seat aircraft could never offer. Night fighter operations demanded simultaneous management of radar tracking, precise navigation, constant communication, and complex weapon systems, tasks that exceeded the capabilities of individual pilots, regardless of their skill and experience. The captain's testimony included specific and vivid mission examples where flawless crew coordination meant the difference between triumph and disaster. Numerous intercept scenarios required lightning-fast decision-making based on instantaneous interpretation of radar data, while maintaining precise aircraft control in complete darkness, where every maneuver was blind. The P-61's stable flight characteristics and comprehensive instrumentation allowed crews to execute highly complex maneuvers that would have been simply impossible in less advanced and specialized aircraft. Perhaps most compelling was Copsall's analysis of enemy countermeasures and their striking ineffectiveness against properly employed Black Widow tactics. Japanese pilots desperately attempted various evasion methods, including abrupt altitude changes, sudden course reversals, and even electronic countermeasures designed to break radar contact. However, none of these methods proved consistently successful against experienced P-61 crews who thoroughly understood both the capabilities and limitations of their unique equipment, turning each intercept into a deadly dance in the dark, from which the Widow invariably emerged victorious. Have you ever felt that your boldest idea, your most innovative solution, was rejected, deemed too expensive, or simply unnecessary? What if I told you that this was precisely the path taken by an aircraft that not only changed the course of World War II, but also laid the foundation for all modern aviation, even though its contemporaries didn't understand it? Do you know that feeling when the future is seen by only a few? Today, we'll delve into the incredible story of the Northrop P-61 Black Widow. an aircraft whose true value was only recognized decades later. How did it happen that a machine, which evaluation committees deemed limited and unjustifiably costly, became a harbinger of a new era in military aviation? What truly distinguishes groundbreaking technologies from ordinary solutions, and why is their genuine significance often overlooked in the moment? And what is the invisible human cost that must be paid for innovations that change the world? Prepare for a revelation. You'll discover how Sport 121 aircraft not only revolutionized air combat but also virtually predicted a future its creators could only dream of and its critics couldn't even imagine. We've all faced moments when our ideas seem too bold, too unusual to be accepted. But sometimes, it's precisely these unexpected solutions that pave the way to true success. Today, we'll unveil three key aspects that made the P-61 not just an aircraft, but a harbinger of a new era. And here's the first one. Stay with us and watch until the end so you don't miss a single detail of this fascinating story. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, be sure to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. You might think that victories in the air are always forged through speed and firepower. This aircraft will prove you wrong. Sometimes, the most crucial battles are won in complete darkness, relying only on the invisible eyes of radar and the iron will of the crews. Once again, remember to stay with us and watch until the end to catch the key moments. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. The final verdict of the Evaluation Commission, as is often the case with revolutionary ideas, was full of contradictions. While acknowledging the P-61's undeniable technical sophistication and impressive combat power, experts simultaneously questioned whether the enormous costs of its creation were justified by such narrow specialization. The Commission, as if trying to justify its own decisions, concluded that the rapid changes on the fronts of the Great War limited the operational application of this interceptor. However, notably, it avoided direct criticism of its procurement decisions, which were made under completely different, extreme wartime conditions. However, such a purely bureaucratic assessment, focused on numbers and current market conditions, completely overlooked the far deeper, strategic implications that Quote 128 joint operations held for the entire future of air defense planning. The P-61 didn't just perform combat missions. It laid the doctrinal foundations and shaped tactical methods that subsequently had a colossal impact on the development of an entire generation of jet interceptors that emerged in the nascent period of the Cold War. The integration of airborne radar equipment with ground-controlled interception systems, stringent requirements for crew specialization, and of course, unprecedented all-weather interception capabilities. All these features became an integral standard for post-war fighter aircraft design. Even more significantly, this aircraft became undeniable proof that American industrial might was capable not only of producing, but also of creating highly complex weapon systems that not merely met, but surpassed the best enemy designs. The SCR-720 radar, installed on the Black Widow, became a true embodiment of technological superiority, granting Allied forces decisive advantages in the most specialized and critically important missions. This demonstration of brilliant advanced electronics integration would later prove key to maintaining air superiority in future conflicts. changing the very paradigm of air warfare. This invisible side of operations, however, would become an invaluable lesson for future generations, showing that even the most advanced technologies are powerless without considering the human factor. The human cost of night fighter operations largely remained invisible to evaluation commissions focused on statistical analysis and procurement efficiency. Crews who flew hundreds of hours in pitch darkness, tracking invisible enemies over hostile territory, bore a psychological burden that official reports never acknowledged or could quantify. The constant stress of radar intercepts, split-second weapon decisions, and navigational difficulties in zero visibility took its toll, affecting veterans for decades, leaving a deep imprint. Post-war correspondence between Lieutenant Ernst and other Black Widow veterans vividly revealed the long-term impact of their shared unique experience. People who trusted their lives to radar screens and instrument panels developed fundamentally different views on technology and human capabilities, distinct from those of conventional fighter pilots. They deeply understood that victory in modern warfare increasingly depended on superior sensors and information processing speed, rather than traditional pilot skills. It was these unique insights that would form the basis of an entirely new philosophy for designing combat aircraft. Thus, the unnecessary aircraft indeed changed the nature of air combat, setting patterns for electronic warfare and precision interception operations that defined military aviation throughout the jet era. Its critics were correct about speed limitations and complexity drawbacks, but deeply mistaken about its strategic value and operational necessity. Sometimes the most important victories occur in the darkness, where only specialized tools can ensure success. Well, let's see how these, quote, 136 study ideas gained their true meaning decades later. Decades after the war's end, the P-61's design philosophy was vindicated in ways its initial critics could never have foreseen. By 1950, the emergence of Soviet long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons instantly altered U.S. air defense requirements. The Continental Air Defense Command desperately sought interception capabilities that could operate in any weather, day or night, against targets that could approach at any altitude or speed. It was then, as the world faced a new threat, that the lessons of the quote resonated with renewed force, shaping the next generation of sky defenders. The lessons learned from Shi-Xiu, quote 40 operations became foundational doctrine for the new generation of jet interceptors entering service in the 1950s. The Northrop F-89 Scorpion, Lockheed F-94 Starfire, and other Cold War night fighters incorporated design principles first applied in the P-61 program. Twin-engine configurations provided redundancy during long patrols over water, while sophisticated radar systems ensured all-weather interception capabilities that single-engine day fighters could never match. But how did the specific individuals who went through the hell of the night sky help bring these principles to life? Hermann Ernst, now a retired Air Force colonel, actively participated in testing these new interceptors, applying his invaluable combat experience to shape tactical doctrine and crew training requirements. His insights proved absolutely invaluable during the transition period from propeller to jet night fighters, especially concerning the complex integration of ground-controlled interception systems with airborne radar equipment. However, his contribution was not limited to testing. It penetrated much deeper into the very essence of training those who would operate these machines. Ernst's analysis emphasized that technological development alone could not guarantee operational success. The effectiveness of the P-61 depended as much on meticulous crew training and iron tactical discipline as it did on advanced equipment. Pilots and radar operators required hundreds of flight hours to develop true mastery of night interception procedures, and these investments in training could not be cut through simplified aircraft systems or even the most sophisticated automated equipment. And while Ernst was shaping training doctrines, his former radar colleague, Edward Kopsel, was working to make technologies even more intuitive and effective. The colonel's recommendations had a colossal impact on Air Defense Command training programs throughout the 1950s, establishing specialized schools for night fighter crews and standardizing interception procedures developed from deep World War II combat experience. These doctrinal foundations proved crucial when Soviet bomber formations began testing American air defense responses at the peak of Cold War tensions. Edward Kopsel, now working as a technical consultant for radar manufacturer Westinghouse, applied his operational knowledge to develop improved intercept systems for the next generation of fighters. The SCR-720 radar, which equipped the P-61, was primitive technology compared to post-war developments, but the tactical procedures that Kopsel refined remained fundamentally unchanged. His understanding of how humans interact with machines became the basis for a whole range of innovative solutions in cockpit design. Kopsel's work highlighted the critical importance of human-machine interface design in complex weapon systems. The most sophisticated radar equipment was meaningless if operators could not quickly and accurately interpret information under the high stress of combat scenarios. His experience with the P-61's crew coordination requirements influenced the development of two-seat fighters, which became the standard for interceptors throughout the jet era. The former radar operator's technical presentations to military audiences consistently emphasized the psychological factors determining success or failure during night interception missions. Crews operating in complete darkness, relying entirely on electronic sensors and instrument displays, faced unique stresses that demanded specialized training and specific equipment design. These ideas proved invaluable as air defense planners grappled with the challenges of interception requirements in the nuclear age. Imagine an aircraft that many considered too slow, too heavy, and too specialized for its time. A machine whose perceived flaws seemed to doom it to oblivion immediately after the war. But what if those very flaws became the cornerstone for an entire new era in aviation? How is that possible? And what does it say about our own perception of what is truly important and effective? Today, we'll delve into the amazing story of the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, a night fighter whose legacy proved far more significant than its fleeting glory in the skies of World War II. We'll explore how this aircraft, against expectations, not only closed one chapter, but began an entirely new one, defining the development of defense aviation for decades to come. Prepare to learn why what seemed like a defect was in fact brilliant foresight. Jack Northrop's aviation giant, having gained invaluable experience in developing the SCI-45 skillfully leveraged this knowledge in the fierce competition for major Cold War defense contracts. This included work on pioneering Viskostin-Fifmontage bomber projects and advanced interceptors. The engineering developments derived from the P-61's creation provided the company decisive advantages in areas such as radar system integration, thoughtful electronic equipment layout, and ergonomic crew station design, which were unavailable to competitors. This invaluable experience was just the first of many links in the chain of the P-61's influence on the future of aviation. Northrop's post-war triumph with the F-89 Scorpion night fighter convincingly demonstrated the enduring relevance of the design principles established in the Black Widow program. The twin-boom configuration, powerful armament, and complex radar systems, once dismissed by critics as excessive, became standard features for all American interceptors by the 1950s and 1960s. But not only the aircraft's design, but also the depth of accumulated knowledge within the corporation played a crucial role. The manufacturer's corporate archives meticulously preserved detailed technical documentation for the P-61 program. This included comprehensive test data, detailed operational reports, and invaluable crew feedback, which later proved indispensable for the development of subsequent aircraft models. This institutional knowledge allowed Northrop to effectively avoid repeating design errors while integrating lessons learned from real combat operations. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Lee Kendall, the pilot destined to achieve the last aerial victory of that war, returned to civil aviation after its conclusion but maintained close ties with air defense development programs. His extensive experience conducting long patrol missions over the vast Pacific significantly influenced the requirements for next-generation interceptors designed to protect North American airspace from potential Soviet bomber incursions. His personal observations and professional conclusions proved far more valuable than dry figures. Kendall's operational conclusions powerfully underscored the enduring importance of aircraft endurance and crew comfort for successful air defense missions. The P-61's substantial fuel capacity and spacious crew compartments enabled patrol flights lasting 6 hours or more, capabilities that proved critical for sustaining effective interception over vast geographical areas. These practical aspects merely emphasized that even in an age of machines, the human factor remained paramount. The former captain's technical consulting work involved a thorough evaluation of proposed interceptor designs and an analysis of their suitability for air defense missions. His invaluable combat experience provided a unique perspective that engineering analysis alone could not offer, particularly concerning the practical limitations of crew performance during prolonged high-stress operations. By 1960, it became evident that the P-61's influence extended far beyond individual projects and even individual destinies. By 1960, strategic analysts began to recognize the P-61's historical significance, extending far beyond its direct wartime contributions. This aircraft set precedents for specialized weapon systems designed to meet specific tactical requirements, rather than optimizing standard performance parameters. This design philosophy would prove crucial for developing effective responses to the evolving threats throughout the Cold War. This very approach of crafting unique solutions for unique challenges gave rise to an entirely new philosophy in aircraft design. The integration of advanced sensors, potent weaponry, and the specialized crew of the Bani Astmo created operational capabilities that significantly surpassed the sum of its individual components. This systemic approach to aircraft design became standard practice for military aviation throughout the jet era, influencing everything from air superiority fighters to strategic reconnaissance aircraft. What was most striking, however, was that the Sukhoi 161 clearly demonstrated that technological superiority could be achieved through non-trivial means. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 demonstrated that technological superiority could provide decisive advantages in specialized mission areas where conventional wisdom suggested alternative approaches. The aircraft's critics were correct about its limitations in daytime combat scenarios, but wrong about the strategic importance of its night interception capabilities. These lessons, gleaned from real combat experience, proved particularly valuable on the threshold of a new era, an era of missiles and automation. Veterans who flew combat missions in the Black Widows carried with them unique insights into the relationship between technology and tactical success. Their experience proved that complex equipment demands equally sophisticated training and operational procedures to achieve maximum effectiveness. These lessons proved invaluable as military aviation entered the missile age, where human judgment remained crucial. Despite increasing automation, the unnecessary fighter indeed transformed into something far more significant than its initial critics could have imagined. Thus, the aircraft once deemed superfluous actually laid the groundwork for all future air defense. It established the doctrinal foundations, technological precedents, and operational procedures that would define air defense operations for generations. The night belonged to those with superior sensors and firepower, a principle the P-61 convincingly demonstrated throughout its brief but pivotal operational career.